So thank you all for joining us for our last talk of this fall. So as you know, we've been doing a little bit of a deeper dive into Newfoundland's birds. So we've been having researchers talk to us about the very cool work that they've been doing with species all across the island. For those of you who are interested, we will be repeating our Birds of Newfoundland ID course in the winter. Exact dates have yet to be determined, but it'll be on our website. For those of you who were at the course last year, it will basically be the same thing. But if you want a refresher or you just want to come talk birds, you're welcome to join us. All right, so the wonderful organization that enables us to put on all of these talks is Birds Canada. So both myself and Jenna McDermott, our Assistant Atlas Coordinator, work for Birds Canada, which is a nationwide charitable organization whose mission is to advance the understanding, appreciation, and conservation of wild birds and their habitats. Turns out that's a pretty big job, especially in a country as big as Canada. And we largely tackle that huge job through citizen science programs. So that, as I think we're all familiar with the term now, is people just like you volunteering their time and effort to the programs that we run. And each year, more than 70,000 volunteers participate in Birds Canada programs nationwide. Here in Newfoundland, we have two programs. The first is the Newfoundland Breeding Bird Atlas. This is a 5-year effort to map the distribution and the abundance of all the species of birds that breed on this island. It's clearly an enormous effort and really only possible with the help of citizen scientists such as yourselves. And we have just finished year 3 of 5. So we have 2 more years to go to fill in the blank spots on that little map there. And if you're interested in getting involved at all, please get in touch with us or check out our website. And Jenna, I'm sure we'll put the links for those in the chat. And the second program we run is the Nocturnal Owl Survey. I have a real soft spot for the Nocturnal Owl Survey. I think it's really cool. It's very beginner friendly. So what happens in the Owl Survey is volunteers take on a route of 10 stops, and they survey that route just one night between the 1st of April and the 15th of May every spring. And we use playback of owl calls to see if we can get some responses. And then you submit that data and we can use it to keep track of what's going on with owl populations in the province. I should add that this information also gets folded into the atlas. So I'm not going to say killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but you're helping 2 birds with 1 stone there. And finally, just one more shout out to the partners and sponsors we have for this program. The Atlas is obviously an enormous effort. The Nocturnal Owl Survey also takes a lot of time and energy to run, and we would not be able to do it without all of these organizations, which have contributed either in-kind contributions or financial contributions to making this program happen. And then tonight, I'm going to introduce our speaker. And if you had been here a little bit earlier, you would have heard me mangling her last name, so I'm actually not going to say it. Our speaker tonight is Chirathi. She can probably tell you her last name much better than I can. She originally hails from Sri Lanka, and she started working on conservation projects when she was still in high school, which is pretty cool. And she got her first banding experience in grade 10. She did her undergraduate degree at the University of Colombo in the Department of Zoology and Environmental Sciences and completed an honors project focused on the phenotypic and genetic affinities of a forest bird, the dark-fronted babbler, across the climatic zones of Sri Lanka, which is very cool. I don't know if the dark-fronted babbler is incredibly common in Sri Lanka, but it sounds very, very exotic to me. In 2018, Chirathi made the difficult decision to move from tropical Sri Lanka to the cold shores of Newfoundland to begin her master's, studying Dark-eyed Juncos, so a bird that all of us here are familiar with. I don't know if I could have made this same decision, but Chirathi says that watching the seasons change and getting some up-close encounters with seabird colonies here in Newfoundland has made the move worth it. So I will pass it over to Chirathi, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about Juncos.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm going to share my screen now, and while I'm doing that, I am really loving the Newfoundland. Not the weather aspect, but the people and the animals. It's really nice to see whether like the season changes and everything else with it. It was like when you see it for the first time and as a like adult, it hits different, I think. So So I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see that, Catherine?
Yep, I can see it perfectly. Just remember to share the audio because I know you have some sound clips in there. So we want to be able to hear them.
I think there's share sound. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my master's research. It's about predictors of reproductive success in dark-eyed Juncos. And so before I dive further into my research, I have some background that I would like to touch base on. I think I'm having a small problem here. Just a second.
What's going on? Can I help?
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, so the reproductive success is very important in terms of fitness, and it's one of the key elements that shape theories of natural selection and evolution. And when we say reproductive success, what we mean is passing the genes onto the next generation in a way that those individuals can also pass the genes on. So in practice, this is often the number of offsprings produced by an individual. And there are different factors that can affect that reproductive success of an animal. And here I have listed a few of them that could affect reproductive success of a bird. So starting from the left, first we have the habitat structure and the composition. So when birds are selecting their territories or roosting sites or nesting sites, they look for certain aspects. In here, I have showed like a bank swallow nesting colony. So if you know bank swallows, they are colonial birds and they nest in vertical banks, and they look for large-bodied water so they can feed on insects and have space to fly around. And they usually look for places with loose soil because then it's easier for them to dig into. So when they find all these parameters in one location, they are better at their reproduction. So that's what habitat structure and composition usually means. And the food abundance. This is a very common picture in all across Newfoundland, a puffin carrying a beak full of capelins. So what happens if the capelins abundance drops in the water? That would definitely reflect in their reproductive success. Adults may have lower body conditions, and also the chicks will have lesser weight and lower body conditions because of that would affect the reproductive success as well. And breeding density, we have very large colonies of seabirds, and usually when there are higher breeding density, that means more competition for food, space, or mates and other resources. So on the other hand, there is less risk for predation, which is also affecting for reproductive success. Then we come to weather. Weather is a very important factor. It can affect directly, like if we think about a cold snap in between the breeding in between the breeding season, or like precipitation like flooding, that can damage their nests and reduce the nest reproductive success. And also it like if they are like migrating birds and they catch a really bad storm, then they can't come to the breeding grounds on time, or they can get injured and they will stranded. So that would also affect their reproductive success. And indirectly, like when there is a drought or something, they have lesser food. That will also in turn affect food abundance and therefore reproductive success. And then we come to the body size and condition. So like if a bigger female means they have like larger bodies, and it's usually correlated to their fecundity or their egg size or egg mass. So in that terms, it affects the quality of offspring. But like the bigger males may have higher reproductive success because of the female choice. Like females might prefer bigger, bulkier males because they are more successful in defending them or the resources, or can provide more protection to their chicks. And then comes the predation. Predation is very important because we have like different avian predators or mammals or even domestic predators like cats. So if there is a higher risk for adult predation, then the bird might think, okay, we have to adjust our reproductive success because depending on that. So they will reduce the clutch size or offspring feeding speed, and then thereby reduce the time that they are exposed during the foraging efforts. Or if they are like higher predation pressure for the offsprings, then they would probably increase the offspring feeding rate and therefore try to shorten the high-risk nesting period. So that's very important too. And last but not least, I come to the mate quality, which I will talk more later on during the presentation, which is selection of a high quality mate is predicted to increase their reproductive success through both direct and indirect benefits. Like direct will be they have better access to food, protection from other conspecifics or predators, and they will get more help raising the offspring if they have a better quality male. And the indirect thing will be they would get more better, like good genes that would reflect in their better offsprings, and therefore they would survive more time, and then they would have more young on their own, which would in turn have higher reproductive success for the parents. And then when we come to the mate quality, how they quantify which male that they're gonna pick, I think it is more or less similar to us as humans, but females are choosy. So how can they pick a partner? It should be very hard. So first thing is in birds, how he moves. Here we have a short clip of a Western Parotia bird, a bird of paradise. So he moves as a ballerina, and the females that are perched right above the this place would judge this male's well choreographed dance and decide, okay, this male has got nice moves, so I'm gonna mate with him, and I'm gonna choose him as my mate. Or how he looks. Looks are important too. Like in here, we have a greater bird of paradise. They have really nice colorful plumes, and they fluff the feathers and dance, like wiggle around. And then the female decides, okay, this one is brighter, therefore he has better genes, so I'm gonna mate with him. To be honest, these feathers don't have any help with insulation or flight, but they're just for the just for impressing the female. And what he owns is a very important factor too, like what sources of food or what are the things that he can provide in terms of the food or predation. So here we have a Wogelkop bowerbird, and he made this really nice bower, which is not a nest, but he made this bower just to impress the females, and then lay all the nice colorful flowers or shells, or even like chocolate wrappers and things like that, just to impress the female. And so the female would come visit these bowers and see what are the things that he owns, how much architectural qualities that he got. So depending on that, they would select their mate. And next, how he sounds. So we have a northern cardinal here, singing his heart out, and the males are particular are the ones who sing through to attract the females. And in the spring and early summer, they sing to impress the females, or they sing to keep the other males out. Which we come to the bird song. So the bird songs are most of the time males are the ones who sing the song, but there are rarely females who sing as well. But the songs can communicate really important aspects like signal's quality, and then the receivers will listen to that song and then decide about their ability to mate or ability to defend the territories. So they are both used in attracting males and stimulating them, and also to repel the competitors or the defend the territories as such. So here we have a yellow warbler and a spectrogram of a yellow warbler. So the spectrogram is what allows us to visualize bird songs, and when we visualize them, we can fully appreciate their vocal performance. So in this graph, we have on the y-axis, we have frequency usually measured in kilohertz, and from left to right, we have the time axis, usually measured in milliseconds. So many birders use these because it helps them to memorize the bird songs. So if I play the song, you can see how that sweet, sweet, I'm so sweet notes goes through the spectrogram, and it's really nice and interesting way to memorize the bird songs. Actually, I wanted to say there is a very fun little game in Cornell Lab of Ornithology. If you want to explore more about these spectrograms, it's called Bird Song Hero, and it gives you a nice game, and you can guess what the song, what's the spectrogram that song belongs to. So this, when we look at this spectrogram, this is what allows us to quantify their qualities that have better song performance, as in like how many song repertoires a male own, or the frequency bandwidth. The frequency bandwidth would be the highest frequency minus the lowest frequency, and the amount of that bandwidth that they got. And the song duration would be the start time to end time, and the syllable repetition rate will be the how many times each syllable repeats, and the amplitude would be the how loud the song is, which is a little bit hard to quantify using the spectrogram, but that's also a measure of a signal, and how these how physically challenging these signals are. So as you all know, the dark-eyed Juncos have a trilled a vocal trilled song. So in trilled song, this is like one of the simplest forms of bird songs, but when you just hear it, but when you look at through the spectrograms, you can see how complex these are. So like to create this one of these like syllable, the bird must force the air through the syrinx and change the tension of their syringeal membrane rapidly while changing the volume of the upper vocal tract and the beak gave to match that frequency. So it's a lot of mechanics going into the trill, and it is considered very hard to perform task. And right here we have a trill of a banded wren. I just needed to explain this a little bit slowly, and it can be a little bit hard to understand graph. So we have a negative inverse relationship between the frequency bandwidth and trill rate, and this limit performance, the limit is called performance limit. And when the song is closer to that vocal performance limit, that means that they are a high performing song. So I'm gonna just play the banded wren trill there. So you can hear the trilled part right here in this section. So if you look at this graph, you can see, so if there is high frequency bandwidth song, if there are high frequency bandwidth songs, the note repetition rate is low. And if they are narrow frequency bandwidth songs, the note repetition rate is high. So it's really hard to get a high end at both of those because of this inverse relationship. So right here, so this one would consider as a higher performing song compared to this song here, because this one is more distant from this vocal performance limit. So I know this is a little bit sciencey part, but if any of you guys didn't understand, I can come back to it and explain it better later. So which brings us to my species, dark-eyed juncos. They are considered as one of the most abundant forest birds of North America. And what we have here in Newfoundland and in Canada are slate-colored juncos, but there are different races of like probably more than 15 races of juncos across North America. And we have like this Oregon subspecies and pink-sided, and then white-winged and gray-headed ones, and the red-backed ones are the ones that can differentiate by looking at them. But what we have here is in Newfoundland are the ones that call slate-colored juncos. So they are more or less similar to each other in sexes, but during the summer, you can tell them apart, because right here, this is a male dark-eyed junco, and this is a female, and you can see the males are very much darker, and they look more like charcoal gray color than the female right here. They look a little bit brownish when you compare them side by side. And male juncos are very territorial during the summer, but during winter, they gather in flocks. You will see for your bird feeders, they come in all like flocks. But in summer, you will see just one junco in one area. So the interesting fact about these flocks, they are very strongly hierarchical. And that means like the larger birds or like elderly birds dominate over smaller or younger ones, or like larger males dominate over females, and adults are dominant over like young males. So this is very important, like really nice, cool fact. If you're looking at the juncos next in the winter, you can see there are like high dominant ones and the little bit submissive ones in the flock. So they are primarily seed eaters, but during the breeding season, they tend to eat more like caterpillars, moths, and feed the youngs with insects. And they are ground nesting birds, surprisingly. And I only had one bird that nest above ground on a branch throughout my study period. Other than that, they all nest on the floor, on like underneath a fallen tree, or like in a depression, or like a sloping ground. They would have usually like 3 to 6 eggs, and they would have probably 1 to 3 breeding attempts during a single breeding season, which is very impressive considering they are very tiny birds. I have seen one pair of juncos who went above and beyond, and they had 4 clutches for one breeding season, which is very impressive compared thinking that they are very tiny birds. And the incubation periods are usually like 2 weeks, and they all the nesting period is also like probably like 12 to 14 days. And the juncos are socially monogamous species. So where the birds of both sexes have only one social male mate, but like they would share the nest with and defend their territory with, but they frequently copulate with the neighboring birds. As a result, sometimes like the male birds would have raise different youngs from different males from the neighboring from the neighboring males, which we called extra pair paternity. And as you all know, they have a very unique metallic trill that has like probably 7 to 23 notes. So even though we think they are very common and we see them throughout the year here in Newfoundland, the North American Breeding Bird Survey reports that there is a 0.7 decrease of their population between the years of 1966 and 2019, which result in like probably like 31% of their cumulative population decline, which is very big number. So it's very important to find out which factors affect their reproductive success so that we can conserve these common birds also. And I wanted to include this slide to just to say very important thing. So as you know, in this, you can see in this map, this is their breeding range, and this is their non-breeding range, and this is their year-round. And here we have Newfoundland, a little bit north to their wintering grounds, but we have them year-round. So we found this in this old book written by Harold Peter and Thomas Burleigh in 1951, that the book said the dark-eyed juncos are a common summer resident and uncommon winter resident found throughout the interior during the summer months. During the January and early February 1947, we found them in 4 locations on Avalon Peninsula and also at Tompkins. I believe that's close to Codroy Valley area. So, and this was considerably not of the accepted winter range, but judging from the number they have seen, they occur regularly in Newfoundland during the winter months. So that means sometimes in the past, they used to be migrating bird species. Now, sometime after 1950s, they decided to stay throughout the throughout the year, probably because they have better feeding sources, like people put out feeders, so they have better food source, or also it could be because of the climate change, their wintering ranges shifted, and now we all know we have a little bit warmer winters, so they are able to survive during the winter here in Newfoundland. I think that's a really cool factor. And then I come to my study site. My study site mainly was Memorial University Botanical Garden. It's a really nice space and have many trails around. So it's very easy to go around and look at all the birds and observe them. But I also had some observations in Pippi Park and in the Memorial University as well for my data collection. So now I come to my data collection part. So I would collect data in both non-breeding season, in winter season, and in the breeding season. So during the non-breeding season, in the winter months, I would put these traps, lay around these traps to capture birds. So they are baited traps, they don't harm any birds. Especially juncos are very happy inside the trap as long as they have sunflower seeds. Other than they get a little bit stressed. I put those traps out and we checked every 15 minutes and take any birds that's caught in the traps and take them to our banding station. And then we band them, take measurements, and take a small blood sample and release them right back to the place where we caught them. I have a little bit, some people question me why I banned those juncos. So banding is very important because I need to identify them individually. So I need to tell two birds apart from each other. So without those color bands, I wouldn't be able to tell them. So right here, you can see there are 3 color bands and 1 silver band on their legs. So when we read the bands, we usually go from left top, left bottom, right top, and right bottom. So this Junco has a name, and his name would be orange, orange, silver, blue. So when I take recordings or when I see them in videos or when I follow them, it's very important that I take down notes that I followed orange, orange, silver, blue at this time, and then the recording was taken from this male. So I can differentiate it later. And also I had this very cool camera trap that I used to record the dominance studies among juncos. Remember I said that they have dominance hierarchy in the winter. So, but unfortunately I didn't have enough juncos banded in the botanical gardens. I couldn't include this part into my research. Even though I banded like 150 juncos, there were still unbanded juncos in the botanical gardens during winter. But I thought it's really a nice video for you guys to see how they interact in a dominance platform. So I'm gonna play the video. So here you can see how when there is a dominant male, they won't let other males to eat from the feeding platform. They would chase them away. And for us to know the full hierarchy, we need to have all the birds banded. Right here, this male is not banded, so I don't know where he fits in the hierarchy. So I'm gonna play the video. So here you can see orange, orange, silver, blue feeding from the feeding platform. And while he's feeding, if there is any birds coming to feed from the platform, he would chase away them because he is dominant over the others. So now we have silver, purple, green, yellow male coming into the platform, and now he's chasing away the other birds because he's dominant over them. So this is a very cool thing. You can see if you're looking at your own feeders, you can see sometimes these interactions, like one bird might chase away the others all the time, and he will get to eat more than the other birds. It's really nice and cool to watch them eat. And so that's what I do in the winter. So during the summer, I would first map the territories of those banded juncos. So I would have my binoculars. I would look through my binoculars and try to find the banded birds. And when I find a banded bird, I would follow them. And this is a map of the botanical, like around the botanical garden. And this is the territories that I map. So each circle is a singing perch of a junco. So usually they have their favorite spots to sing. So most of the time they would come back to that spot and sing. So once I know that I mapped the whole territory of that junco, I would look for their nests. So if you can see here, the triangles are the nests, and all these circle, like the round ones, are the singing perches that one male had. And there are like different territories belonging to different males in this map. And after I map the territories, I would go back, visit them, and I would look for the nest based on the behavioral cues. So if you take part in the breeding bird survey, you already know what you're looking for if you're looking for the breeding behavioral cues. So, but I will say, so you will be looking at the carrying the nesting, like the materials like twigs or like feathers or something like that, or you will be looking at carrying of food, or sometimes like some bird, defend the nest location, and if you get too close to the nesting location, they would sound alarming, and they would try to chase you out from that location. So they will be the behavioral cues that I will be using to locate the nest. And as you know, they are ground nesting birds, and sometimes I'll be waiting on a side, looking at one single patch for like 2 hours, and I still can't pinpoint where the nest is. They are very good at hiding their nest. So so when I finally find an active nest, I will capture the parents using MISNet, and I will obtain their morphometric measurements. And if they're not banded, I will band them. And I would revisit the nest site and record the number of eggs hatched, and the number of nestlings that survived and fledged. I always try to stay in a safe distance so that I don't attract any predators or disturb their nesting behavior. I always try to watch from the binoculars, and if I can confirm, I always then only I always reach the nest and take more observations. So to measure the average reproductive success, I use the average reproductive success per nesting attempt, just because they have multiple breeding attempts and they have extra pair paternities. So I might not be able to find all the nests that belong to a one male. So just because of that, I recorded the total number of fledglings sired by the male during the breeding season and divided it by the number of nesting attempts that he had during that breeding season. And after the fledgling left the nest, I would measure the microhabitat parameters that's associated with the nest. So in the nest location, I would get the canopy cover using this densiometer, and I would measure the nest exposure. I'm not sure whether you can see, but you might be able to see like a tiny part of checkered piece. So I would place a checkered dish that is similar to the nest size and over the nest, and I would count the number of squares that I can see above and on the sides, and I have average to see how much of the nest is exposed to the outside. And I would measure the stem density, how many trees and shrubs around in a 1 meter radius, and how much foliage cover at the nest site. So right here, I have a 1 meter by 1 meter plot, and I would quantify how many green foliage that I have in this nest location. And in terms of because there are so many people accessing the trails, I would include the distance to the closest trail as one parameter to measure the amount of disturbance that might have been caused by the people accessing the trails. And I also use the nest insulation at lowest temperature. This was taken by placing a temperature logger right inside the nest and right outside the nest, and taking the difference of those two readings. I would leave that for probably 48 hours and then take average of the nest insulation right there. And the average temperature, minimum temperature, and average precipitation were the weather parameters that I recorded. They were taken from the environmental, the Weather Canada website. This is the most interesting part, I think, recording the bird songs. So usually you might have been seen me in the botanical gardens carrying this parabolic microphone and all these headsets and stuff. So this is what I use to record and get all these clear spectrograms. In here, I use a parabolic reflector that has a microphone, omnidirectional microphone that's connected to a digital audio recorder. So similarly, you can get these kind of spectrograms with your smartphones, but they are not as directional as you would get from these parabolic reflectors, because parabolic curve of that dish allow you to get all the signal that's coming from the bird right to your microphone, and it cut off all the background noises that's coming from other directions. So it's a very neat set of equipments that we have here. So once I have them recorded, I will visualize them using the Raven Pro software, and I will select 15 high quality songs that I recorded from each male, and I will measure the different frequency and temporal attributes of the song. And these measurements were used to quantify the song performance. So just to let you know, what I measured is right here, I get the highest frequency and then the lowest frequency of the song, and I get this difference of that, and then get the frequency bandwidth. And from start to end, you get the duration. And when you count these, each syllable, you can have the number of trills, syllables for the song, and the trill rate will be the number of those syllables divided by the duration. During the two breeding season, I found 16 nests belonging to 10 males, and I identified 13 different song types based on distinctive syllable structures that belong to those 10 males. So if you have shown 9 of them here. So as you can see, they look quite different, but when you hear a Junco song, you can't really differentiate them from one another. You have to look at these spectrograms to see how different they are. So usually one individual male produced between 1 to 3 song types in my study, but this might be an underrepresentation of the true repertoire of those males because of the insufficient sampling of each male. So right here, I have 2 songs that belong to the same male, but as you can see, they are very different in their spectrogram, but when you hear them, it's not that different. I will play each one for you now. So that's the first one. And that's the second one. I will play the first one more time. So as you can see, it's when you hear them, there's not much of a difference, but when you look at them through the spectrograms, there is a huge difference between those 2. Oh, sorry. Okay. So in my study, how song performance affect the reproductive success of Juncos. So I did not find any evidence that dark-eyed Juncos are subject to performance limit. As I said before, they didn't have a relationship between frequency bandwidth and trail rate, as I showed in the banded rents. The high song diversity among males that combined with the small sample size might have an effect to the lack of this relationship. But then I use those in each individual song parameter that I measured and I tried to see whether there's a relationship between those individual parameters with the reproductive success. And I did not find any relationship in that as well. And I also tried to see whether there is a relationship with Junco body size to their reproductive success, but there was no relationship in that either. When it comes to the weather parameters and habitat measurements, I found a relationship between hatching success and canopy cover and nest insulation. So as you can see here in the graph, you can see when canopy cover increases, hatching success decrease. So this was a bit surprising for me because I thought when I have higher canopy cover, that means the nest has more cover from the weather and elements. So therefore, they might have better hatching success. But then again, I read a little bit more into it, and I found that high nest failures in these forested areas with high canopy cover could be because of that high abundance of introduced red squirrels that put high predation pressure to these ground nesting birds. So that is very important and nice finding that I had in my study. And as you can see, if you there is a increase in average nest insulation at lowest temperature with a probability of hatching success. So nest with better insulation probably minimize the heat loss, and it might have maintained the eggs and fledglings in an optimum temperature, which allow them to develop and then later fledge from the nest. Other than that, none of the weather parameters or habitat measurements had an effect on hatching success or fledging success. This might be because of the if we see the habitat in Newfoundland, it's more or less homogeneous, so there's not much of a variation to it. So it could be because of that too. So with that, I close my presentation, and I would like to thank my supervisor, Dave Wilson, and my supervisory committee for their valuable input and all the nice comments, and members of my lab group, and all the MUSEP and Y students who helped me band birds in the winter, and also help me find nests in the summer, and also the botanical garden for providing us with a nice warm location to band the juncos during the winter. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And also Jenna and Catherine for allowing me to talk about my research and Birds Canada, and everybody who spent time listening about Dark-eyed Juncos and my research during the very busy time of the year. And if you have questions, I would love to answer them with my knowledge. And also, if you happen to visit botanical gardens during summer, or if one of our banded juncos come to your feeders, we would like to have a record. If you have a photograph of, or if you see them, please note down the color combinations as you can see them. And I would love to know where you guys found them.
Thanks very much, Chirathi. And that's an interesting challenge. It's going to make looking at juncos on my feeder more exciting. Oops, sorry. Oh. Seems to be stuck. It's not turning on my video for me. We do have a few questions here. Oh, there we go. There, I'm back now. Just out of curiosity, did you band the nestlings as well, or only?
Yes, I did.
Did you color band them, or?
No, I only banded them with the metal bands, because at that age they're it's too heavy for them, and they are growing out. So I only banded them with the federal bands. And
chances are some of them are going to get eaten, and then they waste your color combinations.
That's true.
I remember that. Okay, so we do have some questions here in the chat. Manny wanted to know how many hours a day you put your traps out for.
That depends on the weather that we have that day. So most of the time, we would try to do a full, probably 4 or 5 hours, because sometimes it's really hard to do it throughout the more than 3-4 hours, because it's so much energy consuming to go on those trails in the winter, and they are now so snow removal. So most of the time we are more than knee deep in the snow. So sometimes it's hard even with the snowshoes on. So probably 3 to 5 hours per day.
Okay.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, for sure. Did you get the same juncos coming back into traps over and over?
Yes. Sometimes it's hard to keep them out when they have the sunflower seeds.
They're trap happy, and they know nothing bad's going to happen to them. Nothing bad happened last time. Another question from Manny. Did you detect any diseases in your banded population? So influenza or conjunctivitis?
We actually didn't look for any influenza or any diseases. We did take a blood sample, thinking that I will be able to test the extra pair paternity in each nest, but it's really hard to get a blood sample from all the males in the population for me to do that kind of analysis. So we did not we haven't still used the blood samples.
Okay. And actually that answers the next question, because Bruce and I, this was my question as well, wondered if you took any blood to determine the relatedness of birds. And I was wondering if you did extra pair paternity stuff. So
yes, that was planned in the beginning, but it was a little bit hard to do that. For you to do that, you need to have all the neighboring males banded and blood samples taken as well. So it's really hard to like record the birds, monitor the birds, and misnet and capture them at the same time. So
you could, I'm veering off course here, but you could do exclusions though. I mean, you can't necessarily assign all paternity, but you could look at the birds in a nest and exclude those that definitely did not come from the social father, potentially. Sorry, I did a little extra pair paternity stuff, so that was off topic.
I will come back to you to know about that, because I still have all the blood samples, and I would love to use that at some point.
Yeah, we can chat, because that's what I ended up doing, because we couldn't band all the males either. Opening it up to more questions. I know Jenna has at least a couple, so anybody with questions, put them in the chat, or feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in there.
I'll ask a question. Is Jenna here? So you were looking at like the performance limit for the trills, like on that graph that you showed. Is that a common thing that's found in a lot of bird species? Like, is that why you were wondering about it for juncos?
Yes. So before my study, there were some studies that found there is a performance song performance, like the limit to juncos as well, but this was some years ago, and the methods have changed ever since, like the statistical methods, and so my way of analysis, this is a little bit more statistical, so I did not include this part. So I used the double quantile regression method to do this analysis, but previous studies did it differently, so I can't really compare that to mine. So the method that I use is most up-to-date one, and with this increased statistical power, it seems like they are not having a performance limit for the juncos. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And then just to follow up, do you think that there's like some other indicator of like song amazingness? Like, is it the like how frequently an individual sings, or like how loudly they sing? Do you think like one of those other things is more important instead?
Yes, I think song repertoire could be one, because there is a high song diversity. So there can be a correlation with song repertoire, like how many songs male bird sings. Or I also found there is a highly like variable with in terms of different males. Like some males sing all the time, like from morning to evening they sing there, like but there are some males, they only sing when they want to. Like if there is a male singing close by, they would just come up to their favorite spot and just do few songs, and then they just go back to what they were doing. So I think individual like each individual has like the amount of time that they put towards song production. So that might be also something that we can look later.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Got a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lois.
Hi, that was a really interesting presentation. Thanks. I just wondered, there are at least two other sparrows that have trills that sound fairly similar to junco. I mean, you can tell them apart, but I'm thinking swamp sparrow and chipping sparrow. But I just wonder, whether you know whether there's been any studies done as to whether those three sparrow species have overlap in their trills at all? If
Um,
there's, the Junco one is much more variable than I thought it was,
yes.
based on your grams. But so I suspect the other two are as well. And I wonder if there would be overlap between some of them.
Yes, I'm not really sure about, like, I certainly know that there are studies done on the sparrow, the chipping sparrow vocalization, but out of my head right now, I don't know whether there has been any study done on the relationship of them.
Mm.
But I will look for it, and you have my email, and if you can drop me an email, I can be able to like look more and answer you.
Okay, thanks.
And Lois, I'm very impressed because I have to say, I find swamp sparrow and junco incredibly difficult to differentiate. Drives me nuts.
Yeah, you have to go with habitat to a certain extent too. And
That is
luckily
true.
those two do tend to be in different types.
Thank God, yes. Chirathi, Jackie wanted to know if Frounce is still around, which I guess another disease-based question.
I am not sure because I didn't look for any diseases. I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I'm really sorry, but I can look around and try to find the answer for that.
I am not the expert on bird feeder diseases either, but Jenna, correct me if I'm wrong here. I may be going off script. I have a vague memory that Frounce sort of reasserts itself every spring, and that's partly why they ask you to take in and clean your bird feeders. Am I making any sense, Jenna?
Yeah, I think that it is more likely to have like an outbreak, I guess, when it's above zero. So the spring is an especially good time for birds to catch it with the warmer temperatures coming. But sometimes there's like outbreaks in the midwinters, I guess, as well. So that's just one reason to keep your feeders clean.
Absolutely. Chirathi, one more question for you, and you might have said this, but you mentioned that age and sex relate to dominant status in juncos. So the males are dominant over females, older birds over younger birds. Within your videos showed some males duking it out with each other. So within a sex and within an age category, do we know what influences dominance?
This like I mentioned that in general, like it's not specific to juncos, but there are more like some studies that are done on junco dominance as well. But I don't think there is a age specific. Sorry, can you ask the question again? I think
Yeah, I'm not sure I phrased it particularly well. I guess I'm thinking I can understand dominance between sexes or between age groups, but let's say you have a bunch of after second year males, so they're all the same age, they're all the same sex, but you're still going to see dominance relationships. Do we know what would influence dominance in that, like within a category?
Okay, so in my study, I did not, sometimes I didn't age the birds when I banned them because sometimes it's hard to age them. So but between the sexes, I'm sure there is, but I wouldn't know, sorry about that.
I mean, it could be something as simple as size, or I guess it could be the color, like the plumage, anything like that. Interesting.
There is a study that's done on the tail, the amount of white in the tail and the dominance. But on top of my head, I can't remember.
Fair enough. And like you said, it didn't actually end up including that in your study, but I'm always curious about the dominant stuff. Did you track the birds over 2 winters? Like, was it multiple winters?
So I banded the birds in 2 winters, and collected the nesting success during the following springs.
And did you? And this is also a hard question. You may not have actually looked at this, but were the flocks stable? Like, did the same birds hang out together from winter to winter?
So there is so much. I didn't include that any like the flock composition. Like didn't see is it the same birds that are together, but there are a lot of new immigration like to the population each year. So I'm not sure how this happens or what happens in between like winters. But there is a lot of birds that's coming into the botanical gardens. Maybe just because there is more food for them too. But I'm not sure what like how that composition, like whether they're the same ones or like how the recruitment happens.
Very cool.
There's
Any other? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, there are a lot of questions that I would love to tackle, but there are so many different variables that is not allowing me to.
So all you need to do is become a professor and make studying Junco flocks in winter your life's work. That's all.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions for Chirathi before we finish up? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as a no. There were some thank yous in the chat, and I will just echo them. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. That was a really cool talk, really interesting study. And it's neat to learn more about the secret lives of these little birds that we see all the time. And thank you to everybody in the audience. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I hope that some of you will join us in January when we start doing our Birds of Newfoundland ID course again.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much. Great talk, Chirathi. Have a good night, everyone.